As always, welcome everyone back to Mobility Mindset. As you know, charismatic Sarah here. Totally cool. Mark,
Hey, how's it going?
charismatic.
We got Eric here with us today. Eric is a father of a kiddo with special needs, just like the two of us. I think Eric has been in the game with this a little bit longer than I have. My guy's 11. Sarah's guy's what, 4 or 5?
Four.
5, 4.
Four.
Yours is you've been down this road before, but I'll let you kind of introduce yourself a little bit because why not?
Sure, thanks. Thanks, Mark. Hi, Sarah. So yeah, my son is 26, and he's, has intellectual disabilities, autism, so he's not physically challenged, doesn't have any physical disabilities, so not using Trexo, although I'm a huge fan of what you guys have created, and I share frequently, because I came across you guys, and then I reached out to Jen, and that's how we end up getting to here. I don't know where you want me to start, Mark. I don't know what you want me to go into.
So honestly, just a little bit about your background, kind of like why we brought you in here in the first place. Like we always bring on parents of kiddos that have different disabilities or what have you. But you have an interesting history of advocacy, and we were kind of hoping you could kind of touch on that. And then I was gonna take the conversation in a different path and talk about burnout. But if we could
Yeah.
talk a little bit about like how you got to there in the first place, then people can maybe relate.
Okay. Yeah, it's a bit of a different journey than what I've heard on the podcast, because I've been listening to you guys since you started. Like many families, my son was diagnosed pretty late, or, the formal diagnosis came a little later. Back when he was born, they didn't like giving the autism diagnosis. They said they didn't want to label him, so he got the PDD-NOS, pervasive developmental disability not otherwise specified. At 3, and around 5 or 6 is when they finally gave him the autism diagnosis. Through all of that, I was in and out of the picture. So I was active duty Navy. I did 20 years and 6 months. Not that I was counting, but I was a lot of the time when my son was growing up and dealing with the diagnoses and all of that. My wife was doing all of that as a stay-at-home mom, and I was out deployed. I was on submarines for 15 years, so that means I wasn't able to get emails, phone calls, anything like that. I would go out, do something, come home 3, 4 months later, rinse and repeat. So it was challenging in that I had no clue what was going on. My wife was very candid with me. She said the best thing you can do is just stay out of our way, because when you come home, you screw things up. Because I'm trying to be helpful, but they have a routine, they have all this stuff, and I'm not going to be there long enough to keep the, she would say the same thing about the pets too. Just, you're screwing everything up, just stop. So I just, I did. I didn't know how to pay my bills, and this will come into play in a minute, but I didn't know how to pay my bills. I didn't really know anything other than get in the car, go to the boat, get underway, come back, and whatever. And then the year I was supposed to, fast forward, so I did 5 years as a geographical bachelor, where I was stationed in Virginia or Guantanamo Bay, Cuba, and my wife was not. She was up in Connecticut. So we came together in 2010 just to try to reform a household again. And I was supposed to retire in 2012, June 2012. So we had about a year and a half, 2 years to really kind of get back together and figure out what it meant to be a family again. In June, I was supposed to retire of 2012. In March of 2012, I started what's called terminal leave, and that is a vacation that they give you to start your out processing and find a job and do all the things to get ready to become a civilian. And after 20 years of institutionalization, you kind of need that. So the day that I was supposed to start, I was going to go up to Connecticut from Maryland, go to a job fair. The night before, I found my wife having an altered mental state in the living room. I took her to the hospital. Found out she had had 6 strokes. They're hemorrhagic strokes, so there is medication they can give you for the typical stroke when there's a clot to clear the clot. Hemorrhagic strokes, they can't do anything because of the bleed out in the brain, and there's nothing they can do to slow it down or prevent it. So she was admitted to the ICU in a coma that night. She spent a week in the ICU before I took her off life support because she'd been having systematic organ shutdown. So her heart just kept pumping out clots, which was killing all of her organs. Never regained consciousness. And so on April 4th, I took her off. Sorry, still kind of bothers me. Took her off life support. And started my journey as a single dad. So my son was 12. At the time, he was still wearing pull-ups, still needed help doing all of his activities of daily living. People that know me, this won't surprise them, but I'm not a very nurturing kind of guy. So the idea of having to change a kid's, a 12-year-old's, diaper, for lack of a better term, was just not something I was ready to deal with, much less all the other stuff he needed. So the next couple of years we'll leave it at challenging, but we figured it out. We got some kind of status quo. I retired. I ended up extending him maybe for 6 months, and retired in December instead of June. That was a fight in and of itself. So then I went into business for myself. So I wanted to figure out, my wife had always been the one doing research and doing everything for what he needs. And I'm a bit of a type A personality. So I needed to figure that stuff out. So I figured might as well go, I wanted to be a financial planner because I didn't have anything planned. Nobody talked to us about anything. So I ended up keeping my house in Connecticut while renting a house in Maryland, both very high cost of living places. And I was losing my jobs. There was a lot of stress. I became a financial planner, did that for a while. Over time, I gravitated more towards public benefits and helping people understand their benefits and what that looked like in the realm of financial planning. Okay, it's not enough when you have a child with a disability to plan for retirement, because you're planning for 2 retirements. So you're planning for you and your child. So you can't just map out what you want, right? And there's a lot of nuances to that. But there's also things about public benefits. Every state is different. And in the United States, Canada has their own program for people with disabilities. But in the United States, there's no uniform across the board. Here's how you get services. So I started building stuff out around that. I ended up building roadmaps for all 50 states and DC, which would take somebody from age 14 to 22, 26 in Michigan, on what they need to do to transition a child from high school into adult services. And I would do consulting around that. So I eventually phased out of financial services into this full-time consulting. As I was building out my consulting firm, I realized there's all these organizations like Trexo that nobody's ever heard of. Or if they've heard of, they weren't really clear on what they did. So I started a podcast called The ABCs of Disability Planning, and I would bring on different organizations every episode. And I did about 300 episodes of organizations from all over the world that are serving people with disabilities. As if that wasn't enough, I would also write every week. I would write about an 800 to a 1,500 article every week about disability planning. What is Medicaid, what is SSI, and then get really in deep about more planning topics. So I was humming along pretty good, getting really into it. Trying to figure out how to be a dad. Candidly, never wanted children, so I didn't try too hard when I was home. Much less having a child with a disability. I don't have a lot of patience, so there was a lot of figuring that out. And then in 2020, a couple things happened. Obviously, everybody knows about the big one, COVID. But in February, my son had a rod put in his chest because he had pectum excavatum, which means his chest was pushing against his heart and his lungs. So they did surgery and inserted a titanium rod into his chest and popped his sternum out. So he spent 4 days in the hospital there recovering from that. And then in March, I was diagnosed with cancer. And they removed the left side of my face. So I had a stage 2 melanoma on my cheek. And they cut from my ear to my bottom of my lip, removed everything above it up to my eyelid. So literally removed my face and pulled my neck up. And so that was when I was recovering. That happened on March 4th, I think. It was about right around the same time COVID was happening, because they sent me home after surgery to recover at home because they didn't feel as safe in the hospital. So I did, 7 or 8 hours and did recovery in the comfort of my own basement. So that was the journey in. After 2020, my son was home from school. He left school in 2021, 2022. As he came out of the classroom, he was getting progressively more and more of a recluse. He just didn't want, and he started having more and more behaviors. And for me, when I'm saying behaviors, it started off with something small like punching walls, throwing his phone, things like that. And it got to the point where he was pulling knives on me and his staff. He tried choking me a couple times until, I'm not proud of this, but there was a moment where he grabbed me by the throat and I put him on the ground. And I wasn't gentle about it. He came up behind me. I didn't realize he was there. He grabbed me by the throat and I just took over. By the time I kind of realized what happened, he was already on the ground. And, it wasn't, they tell you MAT training, all these ways to disengage, and it was none of that. We looked into getting him into a residential placement. through, because he's on Marin's Medicaid waiver. His budget's about $250,000 is what the state is paying for his care. It's less now because he's in residential, so they can bundle more services. But I had to get local leadership at the state level involved to try to get him placed. Because even though I was in crisis, it wasn't. It was a nightmare trying to navigate the system. The agencies were state agencies. I mean, his staff agencies were phenomenal, but the higher state agency, it just wasn't returning emails or anything. So as I gone through that, I just, burnout, that's a good word for it. I was just done. I was done playing. And now this is my perception of things. I'm going to be very clear. This is a guy who just gotten so tired of dealing with his own ish and, everything else that it just felt like I didn't want to listen about the disability Olympics anymore. Like, oh, I've got so much. You would say something and then somebody would try to one-up you. And I don't think they were doing it to try to one-up you. I think they just wanted to try to relate or whatever. Or maybe they're looking for their own, hey, I want you to know how bad I have it or make me feel better. I don't know. But it was just, as a consultant, it was getting to where I was losing patience with them. And that's not a place to be. I'm not going to be helpful for anybody at that point. So I shut everything down last year. And just, around December, I said, I'm not going to, I'm going to cut, I'm not going to do any podcast recordings anymore. I prefer not to do any direct client relations anymore. I had been asked at one point to be a dad, kind of a dad mentor. And I'm like, yeah, no, I just, no, I'm just not there. So, and now I'm at I took a 2-month hiatus where I didn't do anything, and I joined a disability organization, but more in the back office. So now I work for a trust company, more in the doing business. I have a MBA, a master's in finance and stuff. It's more fitting for that than me having my experience in the disability space. So that's where we are now. A little bit of a long story, but
no, it's an awesome story. Thank you. So yeah, I'm thankfully not there yet. There's a lot going on with our kids, and it takes a lot to to work with them. And I can see a lot of our families dealing with this kind of stuff. What kind of strategies did you kind of employ when you reached that breaking point, other than just kind of pushing stuff out and deciding to take a break?
So I did about 2 years of therapy.
Okay.
Where I was probably meeting my therapist once a week in the beginning. And I want to be clear about that because I don't think enough men acknowledge the need for therapy or actually follow through with it. And for me, it was really a lifesaver. It really was. And I hear people tell me it's too expensive or whatever else. And you know what? If it's important to you, you'll find a way. If you can afford an iPhone 16 or whatever they are now, you can afford therapy. That's just a personal thing. And then I work out a lot. I have a routine now where I adopted a German Shepherd. So he keeps me busy. He was about 2 years old when I got him. He's 4 now. We do about between 3.5 and 5 miles every morning before I come to work, and then I work out 3 days a week religiously.
Yeah. I got to say, about 5 years ago, right around COVID, I kind of started employing the same thing, and I've done a 5K basically every day since March 17, 2020. And I don't know what it is, but that little bit of exercise, that little bit of whatever it is, it changes perspective.
Yeah, I don't care what the weather is. I've been out in snow and rain. I need to be out there. I can tell if I don't do it.
Me too. I go outside. I don't have a treadmill. I do go outside every day. 6 a.m., it doesn't matter. Minus 30 outside, whatever.
I just want to say this. First and foremost, thank you for sharing your story because it was compelling in the sense of just the truth of what it was and how earnest. And I don't know if you caught on, but we're very close to the anniversary and the date of your wife. And just I felt every moment of when you shared. And I know it's very difficult of how that is. And I really appreciate you sharing that because it's important, as I've mentioned, and I'm sure as you've mentioned, you learned through therapy. I've did 5 years. I'm not embarrassed to share about it because it's important to be candid with when people mention, man, you got your shit together. Well, no, I don't always, I mean, it's about learning. It's about hurdles. It's about going through those trials and tribulations and knowing and recognizing like, man, I'm not okay. And I need to be okay because like you said, how honest in the sense of like, I didn't want to be a parent. And that's real. That's legit. It's hard to say to yourself and be honest and outwardly say that. And I appreciate you saying that because it's tough. I'm 50, 53 now, and have a 4-year-old, and I'm like, good Lord. Like, it's difficult, and to know where you're at and where I'm going to be at, like, what, 70s? I mean, whatever, however the hell. Sorry. I mean, I'm the like, I mean, I really try to stay in the moment because, I'm going to be there eventually, and I don't know what that's going to look like, and I don't want to, you can beat yourself up, we can sit, and you have to just embrace, like, what do they say? Embrace the positivity and try to stay in the moment. But I just want to commend you for coming a long way because I can see where and envision where you were and where you are today because it's hard. I was in the military too, and I get where your wife was like, I got it. You're just screwing my flow, you're screwing my flow up. And that's just women, she handled the household and didn't want you to worry and just handle you, and I got this, and I know it was probably very difficult. You lose, your love, and your son loses his mom, and it's a lot. And I just thank you for sharing that, and just my heart goes out, and but what a transition to have to step up to all that. And God, because I transition. I mean, I'm a basket case on the regular. They laugh at me all the time,
I know what you're talking about.
Yay, hey. But it's just, I'm like a walking comedian show, but look at me. I'm talking in circles, but I have a point here. Sharing is important, and every day is important to just keep mending. And I'm just envious of what you did. God, I'm mind blown with just all the knowledge and what you've done and being real. I'm like, I need a break. Like Mark said, burnout's legit. Legit. There is no specific time when it happens. It happens.
The only thing that I've known is to try and keep yourself as healthy as you possibly can in every way because it's the only way that you can prepare yourself.
Yeah. Yeah. I listened to your podcast, and a lot of your guests have said, I mean, a lot, but I've heard it seems like a recurring theme to have your people and stuff, right? Well, I didn't, and it's not so easy to be in your 40s trying to build a tribe. It's really not. It's especially when you think, from my perception, it's when you have a child with a disability, nobody really understands anyway. So I don't have the patience to try to explain it to somebody. Like, I just don't want to be bothered. I would rather, the difference being, I don't try to do stuff myself. I go hire people. My solution is I'm just gonna outsource as much as I can. And so, like, I handyman, yard guy, housekeeper, and I just say, well, if I'm gonna have this, I don't need cable, I don't need a lot of fancy stuff. I'm a very big minimalist. If you're, so I just made trade-offs. It was like I don't want to do all this crap, so I'm gonna give up this stuff. But the hardest part for me was admitting that I needed therapy because it was just I was so angry. I was like, I can do this. I can figure it out. And no.
That's the hardest part, is to get to that point and to acknowledge, like, I'm not okay, but to, like, it's like anything, and to I remember that first, and I'm sure you can remember it, the first day, the night before, you don't sleep, walking into sitting in the damn couch and going, holy shit, what am I doing here? Like, oh my God, I remember I was petrified. I was getting ready to bolt. I was ready to bolt. I'm like, who the hell is this? Like, am I going to trust them? I mean, I tried multiple therapists, and it took me a while, and I remember bolting. It took me probably fourth there. I finally, because I'm really big on trust, and, don't be looking at your clock like, oh, sorry, get the hell out of here. And I'm out. Like, it just, I did. And then I skipped out for a year because it's important. And when I finally found the right therapist, and when I was sick and I had cancer, I mean, me, Eric, we can go. We got a lot in common, brother. My therapist came and visited me twice, brought me flowers on his own time. Like, he's just like he's like a dad to me, and just really took it to heart. But like, when you were telling me my story, I'm like, it brought back all those triggers. I was like, ooh, trigger, that word, triggers. That couch, you remember the flower, that, like, everything is like situated in the damn office, it just, woo.
So I did all mine virtually, so.
Yeah.
I was too much of a chicken to go.
I didn't have that luxury at that time. I was going pre-COVID, I mean, we had our son during COVID, so I had to deal with all that crap during COVID, and no family, and dealing with that nuance. That was crazy in itself. And But one of the things I want to bring up is men don't want to do therapy, or they think it's a thing or a stigma, or they think it's like I am weak or I can't. It's what would you say to like if a man counterpart, stranger or not, friend, coworker, what would you say to them, or if they remotely brought up the topic or you hear the hint of that they might need it, how would you suggest it to them without making them feel, that that's such a touchy topic. You know what I mean?
I'm kind of a bull in a china shop, so.
You said bull in a china shop. That's old right there.
I'd probably come out and say, have you thought of talking to somebody? I mean,
Pre-therapist, it's a whole nother, it's like, you know what I mean? Now it's like, brother, have you thought about talking to somebody?
I would say it to my brother, I'm like, dude, have you thought about therapy? I mean, come on, man.
Come on with me, Virtual's the thing. Google me.
To be honest with you, the fact that virtual is an option might be enough to get people through the door just because you're not so there.
Yeah.
But
it works for me. Yeah.
It's a great point, Mark.
Yeah, Mark, if I had to drive somewhere and get out of my car and walk into an office and sit there, and in my mind, as ridiculous as it sounds, but think about people seeing me sitting in the therapist's office in a waiting room. I don't think I could have done it.
I'd be adverse to that as well. I like it. It feels like it's not on my schedule, and I gotta work too hard to get it. That would be enough probably for me to just say I'm done. But and to be honest with you, I've never done therapy. It would absolutely be beneficial to me, and I can probably see myself doing it at some point in my life. But yeah, I would need to do the virtual thing for that exact reason.
Yeah. And be okay with, to what Sarah said, be okay with you might have to go through you might have to kiss a couple frogs.
Yeah. Oh, I'm a pretty, for me to open the floodgates to the level that it would need to be, I would need to be quite picky.
And it's okay to do that. But a lot of people, unfortunately, and I was in the same boat. Like, I thought, okay, they're a therapist. Like, they're like the holy grail. Like, they're going to fix me. And I walk in and they're like, and unfortunately, I'm like this, I wouldn't call myself the China Bowl, but like, I'm definitely like, I got a lot of shit to go through. And this person has not any relatable factors besides a book shit they learned in college and have no relatable street factors with me. So when I'm kind of really, I'm like, my 20 years as being a cop, I'm a little, you hear it, I'm a little and they're just a little too, no offense, bookwormy, a little straight edge, and just don't, I'm a little rough around the edges, I'm sorry, and they're just we're not gonna gel. Like, it's like going on a first date. Yeah, we're not working out. I got to go. Like, you just know, like, let's just meet for a drink, no dinner. If I like you, let's go to dinner. If not, I'll kindly shake your hand. Good meeting you. I gotta go. That's how I used to date. Anyways, but point being is that don't have the expectation, because I remember you said you don't want to set yourself up to fail, to not want to continue on. And it's okay that you won't mesh right away. So have an open mind when you go, because it's okay to look for someone else. Because I always thought truly that I would mesh with a woman, and I ultimately meshed with a man.
Yeah. See, and I when I was doing my criteria, I didn't want to talk to a woman. I had a female business coach, so I knew I enjoyed working with women on certain things. But for the therapy, I wasn't willing to open up to a woman, and I wanted somebody who, if they didn't serve in the military, at least had some experience with military.
Exactly, because it's like, especially being what you've done, again, exactly, if there's things that you've experienced that are very crucial or very, things that have just been haunting you, you need someone that can understand. You can't learn that in a school form, in a book, in a thesis, and yada, yada, yada. You can't. I'm sorry, you can't. So.
And it drives me nuts when somebody says they understand and they so clearly don't.
Thank you. You can't.
Yes.
Just be honest. Sorry, Eric. Yes. I am just straight to the damn point. Eric's like, girl, it's crazy.
I was on subs, we don't have time to waste around with flowery talk.
No, we don't. Mark, do we?
Right. I ain't got no patience for... Yeah.
I ain't got no time for that. All right. We can go on.
Is there anything else that you want to talk about? Anything you want to share?
No, I would just say that you're going to go through some stuff, and there's no, like I said in the beginning, it's it's not the disability Olympics. It's not that anybody's has a harder or worse situation than you do, right? You don't know what's going on in the back, and it's really, your stuff is your stuff, and don't. I think one thing I used to do is I used to try not to share because, I didn't want to make somebody feel like, what am I, look at what this guy's been through, what do I have to complain about, right? So I think it's try to be cognizant of, hey, everybody's got their stuff. It's not, again, it's just not about who's worse off. And if we could just kind of start working together instead of trying to compete, or I don't know if that's the right, I know what I'm trying to say, I don't know if it's coming across.
No, no, I get it. I think I know, like, I can share between Mark and I, we share, and I know between him and I, we don't take it as that. It's that we're relatable. And that's important because then we build that trust of understanding, and it's not about a one-up kind of thing, because then I can come to him wholeheartedly and bounce real talk off of him, like, oh my God, like, we haven't been to sleep in 2 weeks, like, do you have any suggestions, for sleep factors with seizures, or food, or whatever, we're going on, and it's, and then he's like, oh my God, Mitch hasn't slept for 2 weeks either, and we don't take it as like a one-up, and it's about learning from one another. And I think that's ultimately also one of a multitude of things with this podcast too, is we hear so much from the folks that we speak to of lacking with the community is just sharing and creating that space, and giving them nurturing information to not feel that it's a one-up, or but it's more relatable, and to understand, and that they're not alone. And like how you said you didn't have a tribe, and like many times I've shared with the team or Mark or one-on-one, is just like sometimes I've told the team, and a lot of our team does, Mark and I, and we're the ones that have special needs children on the team. And when we share, like when we get parents on the phone, they might not get to talk to anybody else but us. They're stay-at-home moms, and we're the only ones they speak to. They don't get anybody. They don't have any interaction with anybody, or just their kid. And they yearn for interaction with an adult. And so you just spend that time it's not about Truxo, it's just human factor. And it's so important. So mental health, like we talk about it all the time, it always segues back to that. Mental health all day long. Are you going to go back to podcasting, Eric? I know you said burnout, but
I think I said what I wanted to say on that podcast. I might do another one. I did a lot of episodes, so I think I'm gonna I'm gonna take a break for a while, and you guys know podcasting it's a lot of work, So I would usually put in an hour to 2 hours of work in the front end preparing for the guest. Because if I'm bringing somebody on to talk, I want to be able to talk intelligently obviously not at their level, but I'm not asking them to give me a basic introduction. I want to make sure I can, unless it's a basic introduction episode, but a lot of times it's not. It's meant to be more intermediate. So I have to do a lot of homework and get ready, or I felt like I had to do a lot of homework to be able to hold my own.
Well, for sure, because you just don't want to like podcast. I mean, as you know, you just bring someone on, okay, talk, and you just stare at them. It's like this.
Well, that's useless airtime. Nobody benefits from it.
Hi, my name's Sarah from Truxo Robotics. I have Eric here, and he's going to talk to us. That's funny, Eric. See, I'm like a comedian. It's all natural, too.
I think it'd be easier if I had another host. I think you and Mark do well together.
It is nice to be able to back and forth and jive a little bit. Takes the pressure off.
It does.
It very much takes the pressure off.
It does. Especially when someone knows like some, different topics, or they, better at something else, and just run with it. Or we'll talk about, oh, I know him, Sarah. Okay, jump on it. Because everybody knows I can talk to the wall. It doesn't matter. I'll talk to myself. You laugh, it's true. So, Eric, how long have you been in this new position? I know you mentioned it in the background.
About a month.
Ooh.
Still has a new car smell.
I heard that.
Oh, dear.
I am rubbing off on you, Eric, aren't you? You're going to go to work, I just got to meet Sarah from Truxo, and whoa, she's a hoot.
You're in the U.S. too, right?
I am. So, I know you're done doing some one-on-ones, but I'm like, are you going to come out of retirement and help me and my kiddo? I need some what's your consulting fee? I need that
So
roadmap.
that is actually something that we never talked about. Like, there are
I
going to be
know.
some families that are wondering how and what to do to look for that kind of financial support that you used to offer.
Well, it wasn't financial. It was more
Like,
of
like a directional, yeah,
yes.
not like that kind, yeah, like financial direction, like how to plan and all that kind of stuff. If there's somebody who's listening to this and wants to go and talk to somebody, where would you direct them?
That's tough to answer because the whole reason I started the company was because there's nobody doing it. So I never wanted to run my own business. I did it because I didn't see anybody else doing it. In the U.S., a couple of resources could be all needs planning based out of Virginia. Or, these are the two I'm going to give you they're both financial planners, but they also go into the disability planning, special needs planning. So all needs planning in Virginia, and then you have Oak Wealth Advisors in Illinois, and there's one in Utah. Let me see if I can pull them up.
That
And
people
maybe
can
Eric,
access that stuff.
maybe might come out of semi-retirement one day or half part-time, maybe take an intern and nurture them and guide them to teach them. He might put someone under his wing, because it sounds like Eric's done, but maybe he might pass along his knowledge because he's pretty resourceful.
At this point, I'm not going to say yes to that. Um,
He didn't say no.
So the third one is Caring Tide, and I think I have an email from somebody from your team, and so I will send the links to I will reply to whoever emailed me from your team, and I'll send them the 3 links.
Fabulous.
Thank you. We'll make sure those are available to anybody who wants to access them.
And if somebody's in like dire need, my YouTube videos are still alive on Visible National Trust's website. So again, that covers all of the U.S. Medicaid and stuff like that. So that's a free resource. The ABC's Disability Planning podcast is still on Spotify. They can still get that. So even though I'm not producing any new content per se, the old content is still live. And I'll send links to all of that.
Yes, we're definitely going to put that out because, like you said, it doesn't need to be new content. It's content that's relevant. And we will put it back out there because it is always, always relevant. And I need to watch it. So
Well, yeah, like, let's be honest, all these families need a little bit of help in that department. And, yeah.
I'm over here always grinding. I'm pushing the envelope at Ohio, always challenging. My son's on a waiver, and they're like, what? So I've already challenged and won, done hearings already. So I'm like, I'm not going anywhere. It's just, you're not going to forget his name. It'll be fun. Let's have some fun. Yes, Eric, you laugh because you can tell that, I'm a joy. I'm a pleasure.
You have to be. Because the squeaky wheel. It's not right or wrong. It's just, it is what it is. It shouldn't be, sure, but it's the squeaky wheel's the one that gets the,
Yep, absolutely. Family advocates, just start with a bang. I did at preschool. They're like, oh my God, she's got a family advocate. I'm like, it's a couple $100. Sweet. They're scared.
And you gotta be civil about it because the people on the other side of you are human beings.
Yeah, absolutely. But it's like you said, I did exactly what you did. I don't have time, the wherewithal, let alone the knowledge to figure that out. So a couple $100, get the experts in every department and they handle it. I'm outsourcing. It's the smartest thing to do. If you're able to do so, by all means. It's like, it's a no-brainer. And again, if you can, yes. It's like, I'm not going to ask, the housekeeper to go fight my lawsuit in court. It's a no-brainer. So, yeah.
I appreciate you guys letting me share all this and put it out there. It's not the rosy, happy story that I think some people hear or share. I haven't been that fortunate. So I appreciate you guys letting me share my side of it and what I've experienced.
To be honest, it's the real deal. It's why we have this thing in the first place. Sarah and I both went through a real deal. We dumped our guts. We like other people dumping their guts too, because people benefit from hearing it. Eric, thanks for joining us today. I'm going to pull the plug.
Thank you so much, Eric. It's been such a pleasure. Thank you for sharing. Call me anytime if you need a pick me up.
Thank you, guys.